Hello and welcome to another review. This time limited distribution model of Polish State Railway diesel rail car class SN52 made by MTB. And a quick disclaimer before we even start the review: as you watch this video and you start forming your own opinion, please keep in mind that this is not mainstream large quantities product. This model is available in limited distribution and it's been released on the market by a very small company, MTB. Quickly about the packaging. Here's the label. I hope you can see it. Here's the model. One thing I noticed, and you have to be careful with, is when you're taking the model out of the box, is all the weight is on one side, on the drive side. And you have to be a little bit careful because that's a little bit counterintuitive. The model has like tendency to fall on one side, so you gotta be careful not to drop it. And of course, manual. And we have a whole bunch of small parts. The standard set of windshield wipers, air hoses, hooks. Looks like electrical connector for train heating. Same thing here, so there's the two sets. And then you have the front panels. If you decide not to use the front coupler here, you can install these panels here and just kind of extend that front panel for more prototypical appearance. There's also additional set of side panels, and they will be installed later on right here to cover partially the bogies of the tracks. And a quick view on both sides. And this is the opposite side. The overall paint quality is okay, however there's a room for significant improvement here. The silver lines are definitely underpainted and they don't cover completely the colors. Both of the green shade seems to be good and consistent. And that silver line seems to be consistently underpainted around the model. You can see it here as well. There's some problem with separation of colors here on the roof. The headlamp rings are painted uneven, and that's the opposite side. You can see here. And here, underpainted. All small print markings are clearly readable. I'm not sure how well you can see, but definitely this buffer here on this side is out of alignment. And then on the other side, everything seems to be just fine. The side frames and the suspensions are actually very well detailed. The only comment I have is they're finished in raw plastic, so they have this artificial sheen, but other than that, the details are very nice. And here it is once again. This is the powered side, this is the engine compartment right here, and that's also where the drive in the model is. And that's the dummy side. There are two sets of side panels available for installation to cover this section here, the side frames, right here. There are two ways of installing them, and I'll flip this to demonstrate. So you can see the pins on one set. The pins are here on this side, and there's a second set with pins right there. If you are running a layout with tight curves, one of the set is to be installed right on the side frames, and then it's moving with the side frames with the bogies And then the second set here, more prototypical. There's an interface, you can see the openings right there. And there's a third one to pretty much attach the side panels prototypically to the body of the rail car. So here's one of the panels which according to the manual should be installed if you operate the model on radius 420 millimeters or smaller. And this one is going to be of course attached to the side frames here. It's relatively simple to install. Here we go. There's quite a bit of gap visible, but that's what this panel is for, to accommodate for the movement. Now on the other side I have the other one installed where the panel is attached to the body right here, and as you can see it doesn't move, which is the prototypical installation. It's a little bit more difficult to install. Definitely needs some work to make sure that this gap is smaller. So the model is sitting now at about 650-700 millimeters radius, and this is the side when the panel is attached to the side frame, the bogie, and you can see it sticking out a little bit to accommodate for the curve. And this is the other side where the panel is attached to this to the body, the prototypical way, and you can clearly tell there's not enough clearance. The side frame is pushing out clearly right here, so that's at around 650-700 millimeters. And this is 1200 millimeters radius on the main line, and pretty much there is no issue. The panel is just fine and flush with the body. Same 1200 millimeters radius, the opposite side with the panel attached to the side frame, and you can see the panel sticking out to accommodate for the curve. The drive in this model is located on one side, and that's where all the weight is sitting here right there. You can see the dark piece of metal through windows, and then the other side is just dummy. So one track is, or one bogie is powered, and that's this side. There is no traction tires, and that's the dummy side. Now, before we look inside, I can point out to you, here are the locks. There is one here, one below, and maybe I can show this a little bit better here. Yeah, here's one lock right there. There's another one. So there is 4 of them, 2 on each side. So in order to open this model, you just simply have to spread these sides on both ends and just simply unlock the shell. I already did it before, and here it is. Snap-on shell. Nothing really special. Bbmot640 22 plugs decoder already installed. I have the Sugar Cube speaker on the opposite end right here. There are speaker terminals right here already prepared on the circuit board. This is obviously the drive, all located on one side, 5-pole motor, and you can see all the weight is on one side. Pretty much the other side of the model is completely empty. There's nothing in there. In general, there's a lot of space inside the model to hide electronics, or if you want to make any alterations, there's quite a few compartments that you can still install either additional pieces of electronics like capacitors or larger speakers, or even if you want to hardwire the decoder. And the reason why I'm mentioning it is just because there is barely any space left for the decoder, and actually based on my experience there is not enough space to install the decoder, and I had to machine and cut out whole piece of here in roof. Now the reason for the issue with spacing for the decoder is because there is a line of access material right here and that is cutting right into the space between the PCB board and the roof, and it's not leaving enough space for the decoder to clear. So you won't be able to, if you just plug in the decoder and try to close it, you won't be able to close the shell. It's just simply not clearing, and it's not enough space to accommodate the decoder. So you have two options. One is just like I did, cut out flat that piece here, the stretch, and that's still barely enough. Another option is you just simply hardwire the decoder and you hide the decoder somewhere else. So another thing I wanted to point out is the power supply for the motor. Here's a plug, a connector, and as you can see, the female side is here, but the male is not soldered to the motor, to the wires coming from the motor. The wires are just simply stuck into that connector, and in my case they were just simply loose sitting there. Yeah, that's obviously a potential issue for a problem, so I soldered them in. That's not big of a deal for me to have them hardwired. So you have two options. You can either completely bypass this part, or I would suggest to solder them, because that's only a matter of time when that wire kind of slides out and is going to cause a problem. From a lights perspective, we're going to take a look at this later on, but you can see these large LEDs. They are quite intense, and that causes a little bit of an issue with light coming through the plastic in the shell. Front. That's the panel for the front lights, of course. Very simple and straightforward design. Perfect spacing for sugar cube, and sounds very good. You have to kind of play with this wire here because you can see it through the window. I would reroute that. Here are the two micro switches to control the headlights and the interior lights. If you have a decoder installed, you have the option of switching them into different positions and have the headlights and the interior lights controlled separately by different functions. Okay, so let's go for a quick test drive. I have the decoder set up to 128 speed steps. That's again Bbmot640, speed step 2. Very nice and slow. 4, 7, 10, 15. And this is speed step 22, and that's where you start noticing, at least in my case, in my model, the model is wobbling a little bit, so it's rocking to the side. It's difficult to capture on the camera, but at around 1/3 of the throttle I can see the model start wobbling and kind of rocking to the sides. I guess something is wrong with one of the wheel sets probably. Lights functions. This is 22 plugs decoder interface, so you have a range of different functions available. Of course, F0, which is the lights on, and then under F3 you can activate or deactivate the directional lights. So you have the end of the train markers, and I can turn them off if I want to. Now, as you can see, there's quite a bit of light bleeding into engineer cabin, and that's the one coming from that big halogen here on top. There's quite big LED. I don't know if you notice, the interior lights are coming up as soon as you turn on the headlights, and that's a function that can be disengaged as well. The couple of those micro switches on the PCB board, you can separate this function if you have a DCC decoder, and you can control it separately. F4 is the interior lights for the engineer cab. With the headlights, as soon as you turn them on, especially the one on the top, you can clearly see there's a light coming through the plastic and the roof right here and on both sides of that headlight here. Same thing is happening with cab light. You can see definitely this area here glowing, and you can see the light coming right through. Again, something that can be managed either with intensity of that specific output to tune down the brightness of LED, or the back side of that roof needs to be painted. You can see the light bleeding right here on this side and right on top. clearly right there. That's where both of the large LEDs are located. So here's my personal perspective. First of all, I'm really glad that we still have in this hobby companies like MTB who are willing to invest and release on the market very unique and unusual models. Please keep in mind that MTB is a very small company and this product was released in limited quantities and limited distribution. So here are some of my key personal observations. Number one, the drive at low speed is performing very well, relatively quiet, but unfortunately at about 1/3 of the speed in case of my model, and I hope that's isolated incident. The model is rocking to the side and the movement is quite wobbly. The big miss for me with this model is the lack of space left for installation of sound decoder, at least if you want to do the plug-in installation. There is enough space inside the model to install the sound decoder if you want to do hard wiring or some alterations. However, there was not enough space between PCB board and the bottom of the roof to just simply plug in and close the body. The two sets of optional body panels are a very good option to have, and I really like the idea that there are two options to install them either directly on the side frames or prototypically straight to the body panels. The paint quality definitely needs some improvement. Overall is okay, however some of the highlights need some significant improvement. And lastly is the light bleeding through or glowing through the plastic and the paint in various spots of the model. And I think it's a combination of two things. One, you have to adjust the intensity of individual outputs to reduce the brightness of some of the LEDs. And I still believe that some of the pieces of body needs to be painted from inside to block the light. I think there are two different ways of looking at this model. One is as ready to run straight off the shelf model, and then in this case I will consider it as okay looking model of unique a piece of railroad history. Another option is looking at from a perspective of a more ambitious collector and modeler who is looking for a starting point to build something very unique. And then in this case I think this is a fantastic starting point. So thank you very much and happy model railroading.